Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Political Lens. I'm the host of this show. My name's Karthik. Today, I have a guest for you. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, and what you're running for, sir.
Absolutely. My name is Marvin Jeffcoat, and I'm a candidate for the City Council in the City of New York, 26th District. You can check out my website, marvinjeffcoat.net, to learn more about me. And my platform is simple. It hasn't changed over the years. And in fact, the issues have exacerbated. But, the platform is public safety, education, and wealth creation. And I have various tools and mechanisms for how we get there. And I'm looking forward to discussing that.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you got in store for the city of New York. Could you share a little bit about your first campaign point, public safety?
Absolutely. Public safety, safe streets. This cashless bail and bail reform is not what it says. The left, they come up with these buzzwords, but no legislation they ever introduce actually does what it says it's going to do. And, we have issues, the obvious issues, robbery, rape, assault, prostitution is on the rise. It's rampant. NYPD just had a raid in a district, and a constituent asked Julie what she was going to do about it. And she had no clue. It's unfortunate. But there's other issues with public safety. We have large housing, NYCHA housing complexes in our district. And, somebody who dies from asbestos exposure 20 years later is just as dead as that person being mugged or robbed on the subway. So I want to address that as well. These conditions are deplorable. If it was a private landlord, they would be considered a slumlord. So I want the people of Ravenswood and Queensbridge to know I stand in solidarity with you. We have similar backgrounds, and I'm going to do everything I can to address the things that NYCHA has not. We're going to force them to do their job. And part of that will be withholding funds. If they don't repair the units and make the units habitable, they shouldn't be getting the funds. Another issue with public safety, we had a major storm in the area about 18 months ago, if you remember, and it killed a lot of people in what are traditionally considered unlawful apartments, but they're garage apartments. But the bottom line is the city, the councilman woman has done nothing to address the conditions that allow that. So one of the things I want to do is I want DEP to give me, number one, I want them to tell me why it happened. All right. So that we're not looking to blame anybody, at least not right now. Why did it happen? And then I want a plan, a 90-day plan on how we're going to fix it. I have my own ideas. A lot of it is just routine maintenance, like cleaning out catch basins. Some of these catch basins haven't been cleaned in decades. Council lady Vicky Palladino out in Whitestone, great lady, does a lot for her community. She had constituents coming to her crying because they had never had problems with flooding. But now all of a sudden you have this influx of people coming in because they're tearing down private residences and they're changing the face of the neighborhood. And that's unfair. But that's another topic. And they're building high rises, but they don't think about the grid. They overstress the grid, the sewer, the water supply, the electric grid. If we're forced to go completely electrical, how are you going to heat your house or cool your house during the season, cook, and then charge that electric vehicle? That's not going to work. It's going to overload the grid. So those are things I'm looking at. But immediately, I run in the morning on Queens Boulevard, and I see signs of pooling and flooding. And it's an indication to me that nothing's been done. So if we have another major storm, we're going to have the same conditions and possibly the same loss of life. So that's a public safety issue as well. And then you got graft and corruption. I mean, you have a brothel that was closed on around 63rd and Roosevelt, but then there's one that's still operating on 53rd Street and Roosevelt. So, why is that? Is there a pad like there used to be back in the bad old days? And along with that, you have these bike racks that nobody asked for, and now they're encroaching on commercial residential streets.
Okay.
They're taking up parking, and even on commercial streets, they're not good because it reduces the amount of parking available. So then you have less turnaround. Now I understand that the socialists that Julie Wan represents want to condition New Yorkers to use bikes. I'm a 58-year-old man. I use a bike for exercise. Everybody in the family has a bike, but that's not going to be my primary mode of transportation. I have a family of 4. I'm not going to be driving a bicycle to Costco to pick up 2 weeks worth of groceries. It just doesn't make sense. And that's how I get the best bang for my money. So that, corruption is another area of public safety. And I don't want to leave out the obvious. When NYPD captures a suspect, they need to stay incarcerated. And we need, now once they are incarcerated, number one, we should keep Rikers Island open and we should improve Rikers Island. People are arrested for many different reasons, and some of them have mental health issues. And, while you have to punish them for the target crime, you have to treat the root cause. So what I would do is I would finance special facilities within Rikers for the mentally ill and specially trained officers. When you have the proper force ratio of correction officer to inmate, you can quickly quell violence and subdue an inmate or a subject on the street and reduce the threat to both the officer and the inmate or the suspect. So, that's one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to remodel the existing edifice physically of Rikers Island, but also we're going to redo the way our penal system works so that it is providing a service. And, there's an adjudicative process. If somebody, you don't just say somebody's mentally ill. You go through that process. The family should be involved. They should have that family support system so that hopefully someday they can be released back out into society. But once the crime is committed, same with vagrancy. You don't punish a person based on a label. I get that. But there are underlying crimes that go along with vagrancy: public defecation, urination, assault, battery. Those things are unacceptable. And that person should be incarcerated. We have to give NYPD the tools they need to do that. And that includes giving them qualified immunity. I would strip immunity away from all bureaucrats and politicians, but law enforcement and good, decent citizens like the Guardian Angels, they deserve qualified immunity when they act. We just saw this Pettyman. I'm sorry about that. I got an unexpected phone call. We just saw what happened with Mr. Pettyman. And, if you look at the common law, he was well within his right. He felt threatened. And you could say it was defense of others, or you could say it was self-defense. But he didn't engage in an offensive maneuver. What he did was he put on a restraint, which when I was in military police training, when I was a young military policeman, that was lawful, because I'd rather see an officer restrain a subject as opposed to an offensive punch in the face. But I mean, when you're getting hammered and the guy's bigger than you, what recourse do you have if you can't put on a restraint? So I think everything they did in Pantaleon with the Gardner case was wrong. And they, my opponent is one of those that would constantly defund the police and blame the police. And it's created an environment where they've gone after the police, so the police aren't going to be there. And people don't really know. But the police are not obligated to protect you. There's no way in the world they could protect every citizen. So self-defense is valid common law. But now that they've taken away the police discretion and the police ability to protect the citizen or provide some sense of order maintenance, now they want to go after your ability to engage in self-defense. And it's just created an awful environment where criminals, whether they're mentally ill or they're just psychopathic people, are emboldened to go out and commit crimes. The other thing is police officers spent a long time gathering evidence and using that intelligence to go after the troublemakers so that you could take that limited police force and target the element in society that's inflicting the most harm. Well, the Democrat socialist, my opponent, she wants to do everything in her power to take away that police discretion and take away the database that, she was one of those that signed on with Caban that they want to take away the police database so that they're not allowed to know where the known criminals are. And I'm going to tell you, when we start to reinvigorate NYPD and reinstill the pride that they still maintain, but the pride in the citizen and working with NYPD, there's going to be some confrontation because the criminal is not just going to give up the ground he's gained, the territory he's gained. And so the police are going to have to go in there and confront these people, but they're going to need that intelligence. There's a bill that just passed the state legislature, which says that we kind of forget everything that a criminal's done in their past. And so local jurisdictions aren't allowed to know. I mean, that is utter nonsense. It's time for them to stop advocating for criminals and advocate for the average citizen. And that's what Marvin is going to do. I could spend hours on public safety, but those are the big issues that I want to address. Empowering the police, empowering the individual, and actually doing something, keeping Rikers Island open, and actually doing something with people that have mental illness so that they don't suffer the inhumanity of being out on the street in those hard conditions, but also they're not allowed to inflict that on other people.
Yeah, so I appreciate you sharing in depth about that. I could tell that you've actually thought about this deeply. And you mentioned that you'll work with the police department. So first of all, thank you for being willing to be of service to your city by running for city council and for wanting to work with the police department to help them do their job. And thank you so much for the service that you've done for the military and what you've done for this country. It's an honorable thing. So thank you for what you've done. But you mentioned some topics that are hotly contested in New York City, at least from the media that I consume, the way they share about it. And from my understanding, New York City is a pretty liberal, leftist city. And so you're running with these talking points and your campaign points. What do you think is the general atmosphere of the city council in your bid to run for city council? Do you think you'll have a lot of opposition in the largely left society, or how do you think the voters are going to perceive this?
Well, I think the council is run by leftist elitists. They're in the majority. And so that's who you have representing the people of New York. But if you walk throughout the district and throughout the city, people have common sense, whether they're liberal, and a lot of people confuse themselves. They think that they're liberal when they're actually libertarian. And it gets to a lot of young people. I mean, who doesn't want to help the poor, do good? And we're taught these things in our houses of worship, church, mosque, or temple, depending on your faith. You're taught those things, but they don't really enact those. When you get down to the root of socialism, it uses our faith against us to entice us in, but it's not what it represents. And so once people start to realize that, they become totalitarian. We're at a point where we're well on the way, but we're at a point where we can prevent that. So I think people are starting to realize that what they've been sold, the bill of goods they've been sold, is not good, and they're not safe. People are less safe and less prosperous. So I think, like you said, you have the silent majority of people that they don't want to disclose who they're going to vote for. But my goal is to appeal to everybody. I have Democrats in my family. I would never be a Democrat because historically, if you look at its formation in 1828, it was formed to promote slavery. So I have an issue with that. But that's not to say that some Democrats haven't done good things. I'd cite JFK, even though they killed him. I have to appeal to Democrats, and I have to let them know that we're all fellow Americans. And so my policies, unlike what the left puts out, my policies are good for everyone. Everyone. I don't separate by pedigree. There's no special interest. The policies I have are down the middle. They're going to protect you, allow your kids to get educated, and give you the prosperity you need to enjoy time with your family, to raise a family. I want to make it where people want to come back to New York City, and we'll get on that topic later, but I want people to come back to New York City to create wealth, jobs, and to raise their families. And right now, the first thing you have to do is make it safe. I mean, if my employees don't feel safe coming to work, I'm going to have attendance problems. I'm going to have productivity problems. If I don't feel safe having my business, number one, if I'm going to get raided with taxes, I'm not going to come because that's basically theft. That's larceny in a public forum. But if my facility, my physical edifice, my warehouse, my factory, my store are not safe and they're being broken into constantly, I'm not going to do business in a place like that. So I want to change those things. And I think that resonates with everyone. Public safety, wealth creation, and education resonates with everyone. And it's just like platforms like yours allowing me to get the word out there and reach people and let them know, hey, this is for you. I mean, I'm talking about your public safety as well. But safety, homicide rate, robbery, they're not separated by Republican, Democrat. Anyone riding the subway or walking home from the subway is, subjected to the same danger. And I want to eliminate that so we can start to rebuild and grow our neighborhood to what it once was. We had a very thriving, I live in a multicultural, I mean, you talk about multicultural, 26th district has it. I can walk within 5 minutes. I'm a little overweight, but I can walk within 5 minutes and eat anything from anywhere in the world. And I'm not blaming the local shops. I mean, they do a great job. I like to eat.
New York City got some amazing food. I would say Houston rivals it. It's just New York City just has so much more well-known food.
Yes.
Best restaurants, some of them are in New York City. So you mentioned a little bit earlier about you're down the middle, the policies that you're wanting to implement, whether it's education, public safety, or the wealth creation. Those are down the middle. And knowing that the voter base is largely Democrat, what would be some advice that you would share to your potential constituents as to be more conscientious about who they vote for?
Well, I would say they should look at the issues. As Reagan said, ask yourself, are you better off now than you were before, they started this leftist socialist onslaught? And it's really picked up heavily in the last 10 years, but they're not all inclusive, and the policies, are not designed, their policies are designed for control. My policies are aimed at freedom. I trust adults to do what they want within the law. But their policies are all about restricting your movement, this, that, and the other thing. We saw that during COVID. One of the things I didn't mention earlier when we were talking about public safety are these little sidewalk cafes that popped up. This is not Paris. And so what you have now is you have rat harborage and feeding grounds for rats. So that's another public safety issue. But they forced that on us because that's what they wanted. And they want to control the way we eat and think. And they use them to take up parking. They don't want us to drive to a restaurant and say another neighborhood. If we can't get there by bike or subway, I guess we shouldn't go, right? But their whole thing is designed on control. If you look at every policy, it's designed to control what we say and do. Me, I'm about freedom. Now, with freedom comes responsibility. And I would just ask the voter to educate yourself and look at what's happened just in the last 2 years. I mean, things have gotten worse. If they finish emptying and closing Rikers, they're probably going to use that for, luxury apartments. But it's the perfect place to segregate the criminal that has victimized the neighborhood instead of putting them back in the neighborhood. So I would ask them to educate themselves, look at the issues, and think about what I've said, think about what my opponent said, and ask yourself, whose policies are going to allow you or increase the opportunity for you to walk home from the subway unmolested or even ride the subways unmolested. And I think if they give me a fair reading, a fair hearing, I think I'll win.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing about that. It's an interesting topic. So there's a couple other points that you have as well. You kind of touched on it, which is education. Could you share a little bit about your plans for education?
Absolutely. I'm a product of the public school system. And my biological mother, rest in peace, one thing she harped into me was, in America, without an education, you're nothing. And so I would want to make the opportunity available to every child. I believe you have to start early. I believe in charter schools, vouchers, and homeschools. My oldest son went to public school and he hated it, and I don't blame him. It's a horrible environment. And my youngest son, he went to St. Sebastian's, and now he's in St. John's Prep, and he wants to go to St. John's. So, as things improved, my wife and I, we improved our income, and we were able to do more for our youngest son than the older. But I want every child in the district to have that opportunity. I want to get back to reading, writing, arithmetic, and civics, and away from the indoctrination. Children should not have to worry about sex or sexual orientation. It shouldn't be one of the topics. That's an adult issue. Children should not be having intercourse. I mean, that's wrong. And they just shouldn't be done. But nobody has a right to do that to your child. And I think COVID exposed that. One of the things that I saw during COVID was this lady up in Putnam County, her last name's Ibrahim, and she was on fire. She protected her children. That was a mama bear right there. And she was able to do that because she could hold the Board of Education in Putnam County accountable. We can't do that in the city of New York. So one of the initiatives I want to take, and a lot of what I want to do is going to take some home rule. They took home rule away from New York City because of the corruption during the Tammany era, went up to Albany, and that's just as corrupt. We need home rule. We need some autonomy down here so we can set our own rules. But I'd like to see the Board of Education. I'd like to see the candidates for the Board of Education on the ballot, the same ballot that I'm going to be on. I want to see them on it. So everybody in the community has the right to vote. But I also want to see separate boards of education in each borough, maybe reporting to the mayor for logistics and support, but accountable to the people. In other words, if we don't like what the Board of Education is doing, we can recall them, we can vote them out. Right now, we don't have that power. And a lot of people don't even know, unless you're very active and you're one of the selected few in the local school, you don't know who's on your school board. But I want to see the Board of Education in each borough, a separate entity elected by the people of the borough, so that we have accountability. That goes to another problem, though. We have a problem in this country where the legislature has ceded its authority to unelected bureaucrats at every level, city, state, and federal. You have unelected bureaucrats promulgating law. It's unconstitutional. Now, they'll say that, Congress can delegate to an agency, for example, but that circumvents the Constitution. It circumvents the process of the voter knowing about it. And Congress can just kick the can down the road, or they can shirk their responsibility and say, I didn't do it, they did it. We need to rein that in. President Trump talked about it, Ron DeSantis talked about it, but if they're going to have a commissioner of health order that says we're going to take away or limit a right, you have to have probable cause. They didn't have that during COVID. They still haven't. They never proved that anyone was a specific threat, yet they restricted people to that. They put people on house arrest, basically. And then they forced the vaccine. They couldn't demonstrate that it made us more safe. They kept changing the goalpost. They kept moving it, Oh, if you take the COVID shot, and I had high antibody counts. I caught it and almost killed me. But again, going back to public safety, that's unconstitutional. We got to stop that stuff. It should go before the city council. I want to restrict any government agency within the city that wants a rule has to bring it before the council. At least if I have my way and I can get enough people in the council to vote with me, that'll be the case. Because you know what? If it's worthwhile doing, it'll stand muster. It'll stand up to the scrutiny of the people of New York. So why not debate it in the chambers of the city council? Why should we have an unelected bureaucrat just waving his magic wand saying, oh, that's the rule, If that rule, they should have to bring that rule before the council, and the council should debate it and say yes or no. That's what we do in the Catholic War Veterans. That's what we do in Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion. We have strong, vigorous debate, and we decide the direction that our veteran service organization is going to take. And where do we model that off of? The Constitution, and Demeter's and Rogers' rules of law. But if we can do it, elected officials at every level ought to be able to do it. So that's one of the things I want to do. But I want to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic. We have to have standards and get away from the indoctrination of children. When a child comes out of school, they should be employment ready. They should be able to start a business, and they should know enough about the law to follow the law. When a law is unnecessarily vague, it should be void for vagueness. You have a lot of laws. I mean, I'm an attorney, by the way, but you need an attorney to actually figure out whether or not you're in compliance. That's ludicrous. That is crazy. I mean, in your everyday life, just walking down the street, they've come up with so many different ordinances that you could be violating the law and not even know it. So if we teach proper civics in school, we won't have that problem. But also we have to stop over legislating. And that's one of the things that kills jobs. I want to get away from the indoctrination of the children, and I want every child to have a chance at a decent education. So that's why I said earlier, I support charter schools, homeschools, and vouchers, because when you have that choice, once you create that choice, you spur competition. And when you have the competition, you increase efficiency. So teachers, UFT is going to say, oh, they're going to displace teachers. Nothing could be further from the truth. That teacher's value will go up tenfold. What will happen is the UFT will lose power because they'll lose membership. But if you have parents that are homeschooling and they get that voucher, and there's going to be some regulation with that because they're going to have to be able to meet the Regents requirements, and we should have a vigorous testing regime. But that teacher is going to be able to market their skill and say, hey, I can homeschool 2 or 3 kids at a certain age, because when they're young, they definitely need the one-on-one contact. But with the technology that we have now, a teacher can teach a virtual classroom and provide that quality education in the homeschool. Vouchers. I mean, whatever your faith is, your kid should go to that you should be allowed to send your kid to that type of school if you want, or if you just want to go to a charter school or just a good academy. Why should we have education based on wealth? Well, I tell you, because if something is of value, it's worthwhile and people work toward it and they value it. But if there's no value in it and everybody gets it, there's no value in it. However, education is a little bit different. We have to make sure that every kid at least starts off with the same education, and then the opportunities will open up to them. So some kids will still be able to go to much better schools because their parents are rich. I'm not trying to take that away. We should never try to take that away. If I gain wealth, I'm giving it to my kids, and nobody has a right to take that away. But the basics should be taught. Plus, if you look at the fact that we spend about $26,000 a year per kid and we graduate illiterate kids, let the money follow the kid. So you're already paying that money. Whether you realize it or not, you're already paying $26,000 per kid. Use the voucher system, use the homeschooling system, use the charter school systems, use the public school systems. They're all teaching on a standard, quality education, no indoctrination. I'm definitely opposed to the story time with drag queens being publicly funded. That's just wrong. Indoctrinating kids in that way. But give them a quality education, reading, writing, arithmetic, and civics, and they'll come out, and these kids will run touchdowns. You'll be surprised what any kid can do if given the proper opportunity. And that's done through education.
Yeah,
Not
so
socialism.
you touched on something very unique. It's not actually unique. But what you said is that giving the parents the freedom to choose which school they're going to send their child to, it spurs competition. And the foundation behind what you had just mentioned in that point is capitalism at its finest, basically.
Yeah.
So when you create competition, it literally does spur growth and success. And the teachers really do need to step their game up to prove their worth. And I believe educators should be paid some of the highest salaries in the country because of what they do for the youth. And so if they're increasing their value, they should get paid accordingly. And subsequently, that's going to weed out all the bad teachers because some places the salary is just so low, the perks are so low that it's chasing out the good teachers and they're basically hiring whoever they can get. So the quality of education, I'm not talking about New York City, I'm talking about generally speaking,
Right.
nationwide trend that I've seen. The quality of educators start lowering because the standards have dropped, and so the kids end up suffering, which is a tragedy, unfortunately, because they're going to be running this country through and through in the next 10, 15, 20 years. So we need to set them up for success. And I'm saying that as a father too. Like I have a 1-year-old son and I
Congratulations.
definitely want the best education that I could possibly provide to him because I'm South Asian and in Indian culture, we value education almost at the top of everything, in addition to faith and being a good human being. So, like, that's a point that you bring up that is capitalist in and of
Yes.
by nature. Uh, on the topic of capitalism, one of your final points is wealth generation. Could you share a little bit about that?
Well, basically, there's two sides to it. The first side, after we take care of public safety, because you have to create a safe environment where people want to thrive and can thrive. There's taxes, right? Our taxes are onerous, and they need to be cut. I would lower our tax rate between 1% and 0, because that will attract people into New York to come back. And we have these blighted areas that were factories in Long Island City, which is in the district, factories and warehouses. And, they're turning these places into lofts and high-end, yuppie apartments. But, they don't even know if they're building or renovating on a Superfund site. So 20 years from now, we're going to say this person now came down with a disease because of toxic chemicals. And some regulation is needed, but I think we overregulate. And I'll get into that in a second because we know better in 2023 than to just dump raw chemicals into Newtown Creek, which still glows orange in the summertime. I mean, in the wintertime, and the water won't freeze. That's that's a whole nother issue. But you lower the tax base, you lower the tax rate rather, and you increase the tax base because you're going to employ more people. And by doing that, well, now I was listening to Joe Piscopo and listen to him a lot. He's a smart guy and he's down to earth. He needed a new refrigerator, couldn't find one made in America. Why? Why can't we make refrigerators in America? Because the socialists, the Democrats, socialists, whatever you want to call them, they've sold a bad bill of goods saying that the American worker is too expensive. I got my faith in the American worker. I remember when I was a young soldier back in 82, one of the older guys coming out of a factory and joining the army, said, buy American, the job you save may be your own. I remember the commercial, look for the union label. And we've gotten away from that because we've let globalists sell us the idea that the American worker is too expensive. Nothing is further from the truth. You can pay an American a good, decent salary to create, and we know American ingenuity saved us during World War II, and it continues to do so. But we know that we can build in America, and I want to bring that back to New York. New York was built on manufacturing, and it was zoned for all his personal issues. Robert Moses was a pretty smart guy, and you had your commercial zones. We shouldn't encroach into that because we don't know what we're exposing people to, but also we need to be able to have those factories and warehouses so that we can create wealth by employing everybody. When you do that, you spread it out and you increase the tax base. That way you don't have to tax the devil out of everybody. Everybody has a lower tax base, but there's more people working, contributing to the economy, and that's how you grow the economy. They'll tell you, oh, tax the wealthy. What they do is they have carve-outs. So the wealthy that are favored don't pay those taxes because when they create these legislation, these rules and regulations, they have carve-outs for their friends. Their donors get carved out, and they wind up never paying that fee. The other thing is, we talked a little bit about it earlier, but you have to look at the onerous regulations strangling the lifeblood out of our economy. I always give the example of a local VFW post because I'm a member of Veterans of Foreign Wars, and they wanted to be more green. They wanted to be more environmentally sound and be good stewards, and so they installed a hot water heater instead of using the boiler during the summer. Noble thing to do. The guy that did it pro bono. It was a little bit out of code. I think there was a half-inch in diameter difference in the supply line. Not a hazard to anyone. Didn't cause any public health issues. But because they were out of code, they were almost fined out of existence, and they're just now starting to crawl out from that rock and start doing the fundraisers they need to maintain their post. So what politicians never do, they come up with these nice buzzwords, like the Fiscal Responsibility Act that's not so fiscally responsible. And they say, oh, yeah, this is what we're doing. Nothing could be further from the truth. And they never go back to see if that piece of legislation is doing what it's intended to do. I'll do that. I'll review legislation and I'll eviscerate the bad. And by the way, if Marvin makes a mistake, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to say, hey, I thought this would happen. It didn't happen. I think if you give me your trust again, we need to go this direction. That's dangerous and scary for a politician because you live on news cycles. But I don't care. I have to go back into the neighborhood and look people in the face and tell them why I did what I did. So I will have town halls. I will take input, and I'll take the heat for the decisions I make. But onerous regulations have to be repealed, and we've got to lower the tax rate, the corporate tax rate. They pay, I forget what the figure is now, but I think they pay like almost 10% of after net. They pay, they pay 10% of their earnings in city taxes. This is before, or after the feds and the rest of them take what they take, and then you got your overhead. Yeah. It's very expensive to operate in New York, and I want to lessen that burden. And, like Amazon, we could have had it here, and that may be where you heard that I oppose AOC because I spoke out on that. What I would have done is I would have negotiated for a better deal, but I wouldn't have just shut the deal down so that, people in Ravenswood and Queensbridge could have had jobs because it would have been right next to them. And that's we talk about affordable housing. One of the best ways, number one, what is affordable housing? Is $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month? Is that really affordable for the median or mean income in this district? Is it? I don't know anymore. What's the median income in this district anymore? Is it 50 grand? I don't think so. I think it's a lot higher. But one of the ways you create affordable housing is by creating wealth, by creating jobs. So now the person can go out and choose. And if they choose to stay in NYCHA and save that money and do other things with it, like education or saving for their kids, fine. But you have to have wealth creation, and that's how you solve a lot of the other problems. The education feeds into the wealth creation, but you have to have public safety, and it's a big circle. The three of those issues are all interconnected. I mean, without public safety, you have nothing. But without education, you can't acquire the wealth. And without the wealth, you don't have the housing. So my answer to them when they talk about this nebulous, elusive, affordable housing that nobody can actually pen a figure on, because you know why they can't pen a figure on it, though? It would be too high. And they would be caught and called out. But the way you create affordable housing, you let the market dictate, number one. But you create wealth, you create jobs, and then people can afford to live where they want. And, they can decide, hey, yeah, now I got a promotion. I can afford to buy a house instead of living in an apartment. Or maybe I like staying in this apartment, or maybe I want a bigger apartment. Maybe I don't want to shovel snow in the wintertime. But whatever individual choice, like I said earlier, it is, you increase the freedom by increasing wealth. So that's how I would bring jobs back to New York, and that's how I would generate wealth. And it works. And once I do that, the barbershop, he gets more business. The grocery store guy, the deli guy, they get more business. But as you start to take Amazon and other big companies, and I have some political issues with Amazon, but that would have been a good thing for our community. And AOC and the rest of her Democrat cronies killed it. And that was awful. I mean, think of the people we could have employed. But once you start doing that, success feeds on itself and it multiplies. And all the little small mom and pops will start to grow. And that is the American economic engine. And we have to support them, because if we don't, we kill that entrepreneurship and we kill a large portion of our economy, which is what I think the globalists want to do. They don't want you, and I'm guilty. I shop at Costco. I'll order from Amazon because they have what I want and they have it on a broad scale. Like we talked about earlier, I got a family of 4, and my kids are 17 and 23, but them boys still, along with me, they still consume some milk and food. So, I'm not going to be on my bicycle every day going back and forth to the supermarket. And by the way, I try to shop locally, but I try to do in bulk. If you're able to do that, then you bring the prices down in the local supermarkets as well. And you give Costco and Amazon a little bit of competition if we follow Marvin's plan. But the basis of my entire plan is respecting the Constitution and making sure the government is working and representing the people. Right now, these people think that we should kiss their ring and that we work for them. And that dog don't hunt. Not with me.
Yeah. So another point that you just mentioned really just fundamentally ties back to a free market economy. Getting to the root of what it means to be a free market economy by default generates wealth. And that 1% tax rate sounds really attractive. If you pull that off, I might move to New York City. but again, that goes back to the free market economy. More funds flow through commerce and back into the community because of changes like that, rather than various taxing schematics for certain income or earners. It just drives people away. It already has.
Yeah.
I've seen so many reports of people flocking to Florida. I see a lot of people coming to Houston, Texas. It's just attractive in lower tax rate areas like this. So I have real quick before we close, if you could share in about a minute or so why voters should choose you, how would you describe it?
Well, they should choose me because I'm one of them working for all of us. I'm a product of New York City. I was born in New York City. I went in the Army for 22 years. But, I'm 58 years old, so I've seen a lot of life. I've been all over the world. There's no place greater than right here in New York City. And, I'm a local neighborhood guy. I have the same issues that you have, and I want to represent you. So I'm one of us working for all of us. I'm not part of any big machine. I mean, obviously, I'm a member of the Republican Party, but I'm not a machine politician. I'm going to be your voice. I'm not going to be the voice of some wealthy donor. One of the things I hope to do is increase my donor base, the small little $10 donation. So if anybody out there is listening, they can go to marvinjeffco.net and donate at least $10. That lets me know, one, that you're interested in what I have to say and you want to vote for me. But also, it'll help us get the matching funds so that we can spread the word. But yeah, basically, I'm one of you. And I say that regardless of pedigree. I have a very diverse, without getting personal, I have a very diverse background myself, where I come from, how I was raised, but I am one of you. We share the same issues, and my policies are for everyone. One of us working for all of us.
Well said. So I'll leave the links to your website in the description of this video or audio, wherever you may be watching this from. So I appreciate you, Mr. Jeffcoat. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you on.
Please call me Marvin, and thanks, Karthik. I appreciate it.
Sounds good, Marvin. Yeah, so for all of you guys tuning in, I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I'll leave all the links to the gentleman's information in the description of this video or audio. And thank you again. See you guys on the next one.
Thanks.
Cool.